Now I'd like to, we'll have a very brief panel discussion, about 15 minutes. And besides Maria and Mario, I'd like to call on the stage Kai Kaiser he's a senior economist from the World Bank. Please come over. Ramya Gopalan from UNDP, Innovation Specialist. And Rina Estuar from Ateneo Ibayanihan. Please come on stage, and Maria will be your moderator.
Why don't we start by, let me give, let me ask Kai to talk to us about a project that we're working on, World Bank, in terms of the Open Roads project.
Sure. You know, I presented this morning, but I was reflecting on the talk earlier about big data, structured data, and unstructured data. Now, I'm an economist, I work on public finances, so I spend a lot of my time thinking about how can we make public finances more effective, but also how can we connect with people? How can we connect with people when we talk about budgets and make budgets accountable? Now, of course, you know, through the PDAF issue, that was the one time when, you know, budgets became sexy, or people were really engaged and got out on the street with regards to public finances. And really, that's what we're trying to do. If you go, for example, onto the website now of DBM, and just have a look at the proposed budget for 2016, or even the budget for 2015, you will see a structured data set of about 180,000 observations. Those are 180,000 lines. And that reflects 3 trillion of expenditures, of pesos that the government is spending. So what we spend a lot of time on, I think particularly as the government is putting a lot of this information into the public domain, is how do you make that data useful? How do you connect it back? How do you give people voice and link it to unstructured data? So you have a data set of 188,000 line items. But what we're trying to do in a project that we've also been working with LAPLA on is connect that structured data at some level with unstructured crowdsourced data, images, videos, and others. So through the Open Roads program, or what we were talking about this morning, #OurRoad2, what we're trying to do is bring this budget data and connect it to a lot of the big data and the connection data. And actually, by mapping these roads, we can start interrogating the data too, of understanding, okay, we provide people the opportunity to provide feedback, but also in times of disaster, we understand what are the red roads, what are the roads that really matter to people for disaster. But in closing, I just want to say, connecting that data, making that happen, requires 2 things together, 2 hands to clap, is bringing together the structured data, which often we rely on government for. I was thinking about your presentation on Argos, right? You had the purple data. The purple data was the data that was coming from government. But you needed to put that together with the other colored data, which was the data that was coming from the people, from the thing. And I think that's the area where we need to work on, and we've been working, bringing those 2 different types of data. And I would say the fearless leadership comes from government, through its open government partnership and others, actually putting that information together with what the people are saying.
That is great. That's great, because you've just tied up the entire day so far, Rina. And tell us what you're working on, Ibayanihan, and how we're coming together.
It's precisely just that. The ground truth comes from weather sensors, hazard information. But on top of that, we also know that there's truth coming from the ground up, which is crowdsourced data. And that's the idea behind Ibayanihan, is to layer the structured and unstructured information, but backed up by science, validating through machine learning algorithms, to make sure that we are on the right track.
Ramya, you've seen and worked in different countries, and the UN is heading the innovation group there. How do you see all of this coming together? What best practices can we take?
Well, there are a number of different aspects that we can look at as part of our work. What innovation offers is to continually look at new frontier technologies, look at new sources of data, look not just at technology as a product, but also how it supports the process of social innovation, which often gets missed. Looking at citizen-generating data, looking at the users that we're trying to serve and the voice that they bring into the design of a product and service. And that's really what the meaning is of social innovation and how that can be used to improve the kind of wicked problems that we face in development.
Mario, how difficult is it to do what you're asked for? This is also something that we had talked about, right?
Right. So in our space, in all of this is the prediction part. It's the ability to look ahead and be able to predict the event when the events happen, right? And in order for that to happen, we need historical data, especially on healthcare. And that's one area in emergency services that we need to have, which is data. But in the absence of that, the Philippines is very, very active in social media. There's no reason why we cannot build intelligence from that. But again, I can't stress the fact that when you are talking about an advocacy, especially around calamities, around natural disasters, you got to turn on that location service because prediction cannot be generalized. It has to be localized. So if I'm going to predict an accident in EDSA, it's relatively easy because the data is localized. But if I'm going to predict, it across the country, it's too generalized and it won't matter. It doesn't matter to you that there's a collision in the corner of Balintawak and EDSA if you're in Cebu. So it's important that the location services. So that's one area. The other one is healthcare, the emergency services.
If there's one thing that you could get rid of that is standing in the way of what you want to accomplish, what would that be? Rina.
Singularity.
Singularity. Explain.
Yes, because the problems are real world problems. It is addressed not by one discipline, but by multiple disciplines. So for the education to work towards the future for 2030, I believe the structure should be that students are given real-world problems and are taught in different disciplines at the same time.
You teach at Ateneo and you have a lab that you're putting together. How do we get Filipinos getting to that stage where the education gets them ready, gives them the technological knowledge they need to have?
You start from the K to 12, I think, no? In the same manner that the education system is being shifted towards disaster science, maybe part of the education can be towards proper use of social media. Things that are a reality to the youth should be embedded in the educational system. And I think it should really be applied.
Hi?
I would say interoperability. What do I mean with that? Data interoperability. Information and putting information together, like putting budget numbers together with videos of roads and connecting them with people providing Twitter information background, requires you to put different layers of information together. And that's what we're really trying to do with a lot of these projects. Now, it is very difficult to kind of harness that type of knowledge or that type of real-time policy information when data sets come in hundreds of different formats. And as I say to many people, is liberate the PDF. The PDF is not an interoperable data source. Twitter's, the kinds of information that Mario is talking, that is information with some work and creativity that we can make interoperable. Information like budget data, when we put it out there in structured formats and we give it unique IDs, I use an acronym. I hope many of you at some point will learn the word UACS, Unified Account Code Structure, which is something that the government is just putting in place. That starts giving us interoperability and allowing us to put data together. So data interoperability is my vote.
Mario?
So for me, it's connectivity. It needs to be reliable. It needs to be cheaper. I worked in telecoms for 10 years, but still connectivity it will be disastrous if I have to move my delivery center to Silicon Valley. It'll be disastrous, and the primary reason would be not talent. It would be because of connectivity.
And Ramya.
I guess I come from a completely different background from my peers here. And I would have to say skepticism or resistance to change. I think very often we get too comfortable in the kind of solutions we develop. And we always say, kill your darlings, because I think that's key for making any innovation work or even trying new things. We hold on to our darlings and we're very resistant to change. You know, the way we work or even looking at what new opportunities there might be that we can bring into our work. So that's always the biggest challenge for us.
So a lot of these things now require the understanding of policymakers. We have after us Representative Lenny Robredo and Governor Joey Salceda talking about the global goals as well. But to talk to these, both of them have grassroots. They've come up from the ground and moved up. But if you could, what is a major legislative challenge you see that needs to be addressed?
Well, I think, again, coming from my perspective, which is we spend a lot of information. I think a lot about government and how open government can work. So I think one area is beginning to institutionalize and clarify the types of information that government puts out. I think the open data discussions, what use and access rights you have to data. One area that we've been thinking a lot about is mapping information. I think it's an area that's critical in the area of disaster risk, but it's also critical when we start mapping roads, when we start mapping infrastructure, is what is the policies that government has to actually both publicize information in terms of mapping data. So clarifying those types of policies, I think, is a very important challenge. It's progressive, it takes time, and you can do it over time, but I think clarifying those policies. And the second one that I would add, particularly for incoming policymakers, you know, I was recently reading a study that the bank, we were looking at ICT, big ICT projects across the world, and of ICT, whether it's Obamacare or other, you know, are really truly successes.
Why did they fail?
I think they failed for a number of reasons. One is we put too much emphasis on the big technology solving the problem. I think that's a sort of build the system and everything will take care of it. I think skepticism and being able to understand there is resistance to introducing new IT systems. Technology does not change people's behavior. It is something that we can help leverage to change people's behavior. But if people, you know, I was thinking, for example, even on the judicial case management, if there are strong, ingrained practices that resist sharing information or putting it into the public domain, no IT system will solve that. And I would say to policymakers, when you're trying to roll out a major IT system, don't think that by rolling out the IT system you will fix the problem. Identify the problem, think carefully what change management you will have, and then think, how can technology be disruptive as well as providing new systems? So, you know, again, it's a lever, it's not the solution.
Maybe to add to that, in relation to health, if public data can be used to predict, to layer, but health data is very much private. And our Data Privacy Act needs more clarification.
Yes.
Because if we do need health data during disaster, it's not something that you can just turn on. Right. There are layers and layers of permissions that need to be in place, even for electronic medical record providers. We do have a lot out there. Shine OS Plus is one of those. We offer it for free. And there's still a question of who owns the data when we actually collect the data when it comes to health. So I think if there's one policy that needs to be put in place for 2030 for sustainability, it has to be a clarification on the Data Privacy Act.
I'll add to that as well, because that has an impact on an internet company. Mario.
So using a technology catchphrase, it's open. Open, it can be translated as transparency, it can be inclusiveness or whatnot, interoperability, right? So the Filipino has a lot of discarding. They can do a lot of things with little. So if you put in roads, they will find a way. If you put in bridges, they'll find a way. If you put in schools, they'll find a way. If you put connectivity, they'll find a way. So I think fundamentally, the movement towards towards open innovation is the key to taking it forward, and the number one constraint.
I think in terms of legislative challenges, there are many, and my colleagues have picked on the best ones, I think. But what seems to work, and that's the business model we've been using now, is looking not just at immediate system level change or immediate national scalability, but really starting with the smaller prototypes, identifying the few champions in government or in the private sector who are willing to test these prototypes, and then let the prototypes influence the change in policy that you'd like to see. Rather than going for the change in policy directly, show them what can be, and then advocate for the change organically, through your champions, and that seems to work better than asking for a policy change.
Fantastic. And the last question I want to ask you is, we have Filipinos who are active on social media. We've done crowdsourcing. I guess if you're a Filipino today, what should you be looking at? What can you be looking at? And I'm going to nudge you a little bit because we've got 2016 elections, which Ola has also mentioned. On both fronts, as a person, as somebody about to vote, what advice would you give?
Well, I'll come back sort of the area that I've been working on, I care also with you, which is, what I call it sort of bits in concrete, right? We care about leaders providing good infrastructure. We care about, what I said in my talk this morning, good roads should be good politics. So we should be looking to our leaders to sort of develop and provide infrastructure and others in a good way. And I think all of the things that we've been talking about today, the advocacy for information, the feedback, the pointing out both the positive but also nudging your leaders to go in that direction through, I think, the kinds of engagements that you have, I think is really, really powerful. So you need to push to say, give us the purple data in your map. What do we expect from government? What do we look for from government first? Open data, the types of information. But then do your part. It's like two hands clapping. Government can do some. Fearless leaders, I think, can do some in government. But you need to bring that together and make it happen, and also make it scale. So that would be, I think, my plea to all of the people who are sitting in the room. I think a final one that I would also add is, just by virtue of us being here, we're a privileged group. We're a privileged group because we have, all of us, to some extent, have mobile phones that are, in many cases, well above somebody's monthly income. So we're all privileged. We're also privileged because we have access to information and discussion. Reach out to those that are beyond the digital divide. Figure out in your own way. For example, I got asked an interesting question, what about those who don't have access to the internet? What good is all of this to them? There are a number of things that we can do to bridge that, and you talked about some of them, even that Facebook are doing and others to do that. But think about, what is your part that you can do to connect somebody to the internet, or to connect somebody to that loop, even if they're not there? Because I think that's also, you can be bridges to those people. You can be bridges to the extreme poor. You can be bridges to those who don't have. So I would encourage all of you to think, how can you connect? But then how can you be bridges to those who are, who don't own the iPhone or the latest Samsung, whatever model it is?
Proceed with caution with social media. Think first before you tweet, because it can build us or destroy us.
Mine is infrastructure. Vote for the guy who would use that as a platform, because I think that exponential growth for us, when it takes almost a day to transport goods from one place to the other in the same island, that's just nuts. That's just crazy. When we cannot go west to east. I mean, when it takes us a whole day to cross practically a short distance to go from the west side of Luzon Island to the east side. So because that's where exponential, when we can transport our goods, and when we can move about the country, where we can then spread out and have a urban sprawl and not be concentrated only in Manila, where waste is, the whole ecosystem is a mess. We got to go for the guy that will bring infrastructure.
Not to sound cliched, but I have to borrow from Gandhi here, and I can say that it's really important to be the change you want to see. And I think, you know, on the one side you have the digital divide, but on the other side, y'all are all Filipinos, but you don't necessarily, you know, while you live here, your peer group is much larger than Philippines. And you know, the opportunities that the digital world offers you is reaching out to your peers outside and looking at what ideas you can bring to bear in your work, so that, you know, you don't go to your leaders, but you wait for you make your leaders come to you, and you can be that catalytic force.
Hello, yay! Thank you. Please join. Can I borrow? Please just let's give a hand to Ramya, Mario, Rina, and Kai, and to yourself. Thank you. We're going to the last section. Hashtag the leader I want. I give it back to Bani and Chai.